Solo Full Tilt Rage is a round made by Sancho West, and it's one of those maps where it's easy once you know the timings and strats, but it's hard to explain due to how quickly you need to process everything. I'll do my best to break down the strats, techniques, and general best practices you should do for this round. Let's first explain how the round is laid out. The map is broken into 4 sections. The first 3 zones contain a row of drums in which the player has to traverse, but each section has 2 swinging logs or thick bonkuses that blocks 4 drums. However, you can still hit the edge of the bonkus while on the 5th one, but for simplicity's sake, let's say it covers 4 pads. The final section has 2 drums and a thick bonkus that the player has to get on top of and make their way to the finish line. 6 out of the 7 logs swing at the exact same speed and are synchronized. As you can see, they all cover the pads at the same time. Now, let's break down the techniques you'll be relying on constantly, and that's diving, dive canceling, skipping, and floating. As you get better, you'll find yourself using all of these techniques incredibly quickly. For nearly all the sections, the ideal run uses the 1-1-2-1-2 flop. This is something that I just made up, by the way, and it's not anywhere official, and it's just how I can best describe it. For the beginning of a section, you'll dive once, and that's when the bonkus is ideally in the middle. Then you just stay in the air and only dive once you've almost passed it. Then once you've passed it, immediately dive, then quickly press your dive button once again. You should be low to the floor, and right when you've passed both logs, quickly input 2 dives once again. When you input a dive right after hitting a drum, you basically cancel the floor animation you would get if you hit the pad like normal. This is called dive canceling. Let's simplify this. So it's 1 dive, you then keep hovering to the last possible second, then once you've passed it, input 2 dives immediately, and that's a 1-2, and then you just do that one more time. I know it's confusing, it's one of those things that you'll understand when you watch me do it. And as you get better and better, you wouldn't even be thinking about any of that stuff. Although there are moments where you could dive into 2 drums at the same time and kill your momentum. Or you could forget to double dive and the bonkus is coming towards you and a dive just won't save you. Here's another critical technique you need to learn, and that's what I like to call skipping. To do this, you'll need to land on one of the 4 pads that the log will block. Make sure you land on the pad when the thick bonkus is to the side. And if you did that correctly, as the log is coming to the middle, you'll be hovering over it, and just make sure to move your carrier to the side a little so you don't hit the handle of the thick bonkus. You effectively skipped over the bonkus like it was a jump rope. You're basically slowing yourself down, so this technique should only be used if you're out of sync and can use the 1-1-2 flop. I highly recommend you employ this strat at the 2nd or 3rd section. While it can be done at the 1st, it's much easier to just wait at the starting line for the right time to blitz through the zone. And really the only time I would say to use it on the 1st section is when you messed up and you need to quickly recover. Once I learned this strat, that's when the map became incredibly easy. While it is possible to speedrun majority of the drums, and ideally that's what you should do to get the best possible time, you may need to slow down and let the bonkus pass underneath you. Let's talk about how you'll tackle the final section. You'll need to wait until the log is about to go sideways, then jump on it, run along, and then jump dive to the finish line. Don't worry, I'll be breaking down the final section in a little bit more detail later in the video. Alright, that's the strats broken down. Now let's go through every section and what you should do depending on what's going on around you. The first section is by far the easiest one, and for this one I just recommend you blitz right through it. Wait for the first bonkus to be in the middle, then dive onto the 2nd drum and just fly over it, and dive once you've cleared some distance. Then quickly dive cancel or dive 2 times in quick succession and just fly over that one as well. But we're not quite done yet. You need to dive cancel one more time, then just hang in the air and make your way to the 2nd pad or the pad that's right before the 3rd bonkus. Wait for the log to be in the middle, then proceed to fly over it and dive when you're right near the end of the log. Then dive 2 times and you should be low to the floor. Then you'll be able to fly over the 4th bonkus with no problem. Well, in an ideal world anyways. I'll talk about what could go wrong in a later part of the video. For the 3rd section, there's quite a few ways you can enter it. The way I did it on my personal best was that I landed on the 1st drum that the thick bonkus covers and was able to fly over it with no problem. I then double dived and got near to the 6th log when it was in the middle. And then I was able to fly over that one with no problem as well. However, I've only done it this way once. Another way to pass the 5th bonkus is just like how I previously mentioned. However, you want to dive upon passing it, but this time you'll just float to the log and wait until, well, you guessed it, blocks the drums, and then dive once the coast is clear. You then fly like the free bird you are, and then dive once you've passed it. Another much easier way of tackling the third section is to just jump on the second drum and be on your way. This time, however, you may need to do the old 1-1-2 dive, and you may arrive at a bad time. Don't worry, just land on the middle and float over the pad and let it pass underneath you, and just move around the handle. Personally, the sixth bonkers is the one where I have to slow myself down the most and let the bonkers pass underneath me. Approach the final section however you want. In my fastest time, I would dive cancel on the pads after the sixth log, and then I will dive onto the second last drum. However, you could just dive after the bonkers and just float to the third last pad and hold forwards till you reach the final drum. What I used to do was I would just bounce on the final drum and wait until the bonkers was going to one side. Then I would jump dive on top of it and run forwards. Usually I would only go to the left side at first, and I keep doing that till I was able to do it without much issue. Then as I got better, I would attempt to go to the right side this time, and I would just keep doing that until I basically mastered that side too. I recommend you get comfortable with going to one side only, then try for the other one once you feel more comfortable with it. Eventually, once you mastered both sides and you just really get a hang of the timing of the final bonkers, you'll just be able to just bounce once on the drum and immediately go for the jump. But at first, I recommend just bouncing on the drum a few times, then lowering it to 2 bounces, and then finally only bounce once. But remember, do this gradually, or you could just go for it, but if that's what you want to do, I'm not stopping you. Speaking of that, where should you jump anyways? I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but jump when the bonkers has reached the middle and just float towards it, and you'll land right as about to reach the side fully. Then quickly run and jump dive to the finish line. If you land at the log and it's starting to move to the other direction, run to where it's headed and you'll be fine. In this case, it's going to the right and I was to the left, but I ran to the right side. In this section, I'll talk about the ways you can recover. The thing with the drum is, if you get hit by the edge of the bonkers, you'll just ragdoll in the air. Try to land on the pad and your character will eventually straighten themselves out. As you pass a bonkers, you will need to dive cancel or dive 2 times, and sometimes when you do that, you'll find that your character will hit 2 pads at the same time, and that could kill your momentum, and you're usually right next to the log. So what you should do is go to the middle or go to one of the drums that the bonkers is going to block and just skip over the bonkers. I recommend doing it twice, but usually as you get better, you'll only need to do this once. The only time I recommend doing this on the first section is say you actually pass the first bonkers, then you dove on 2 pads really quickly and you actually ended up killing your momentum. And you need to pass the bonkers quickly, otherwise it'll hit you. This is the only time I recommend using this technique on the first section. You know, with the 10.0 update, I thought Mechatronics said they would improve body blocking. However, unfortunately, it is really bad on this map. It's probably due to its size and how close you are to the other players. If anything, if you do get body blocked, try and aim for the drums and hopefully you'll recover. In most of my runs, I will at least once have to slow myself down and skip over a bonkers. Sometimes it'll be the 3rd one, other times it'll be the 4th one, or even the 6th one. Heck, even sometimes I'll have to actually skip over 2 bonkerses, like the 3rd and 4th one. I know it sounds odd to say this now, but learn to be patient and not just blitz through the section without observing where the log is and where you'll end up when you get near it. If you master this, you'll be able to run through this map with ease, and eventually with time, you won't have to jump on a drum constantly and wait for the right time to cross. Oh yeah, fun fact, there's a skip you can do in this map. You need to let the 4th bonkers hit you while you're under it, and it'll fling you past the 5th bonkers. I've only done this twice, and on both times, I've done it on accident. The first time, I actually landed on top of the bonkers, and I was actually able to recover quickly, and the other time, I went past the 5th bonkers. This map seems to have a max player count of 1, so here's a share code that you guys can actually input in custom lobbies. Thank you to our Mechatronics members for your support. Here's my fastest time for you guys to hyper analyze, a time of 0 minutes, 27 seconds, and 2 milliseconds.